And that's why during the post-election violence, even though people were told, or propaganda was that it was ethnic, it was actually class. In the sense that after all that propaganda, it is the poor who are made to fight their fellow poor. I told you in the Rift Valley, they were only evicting and burning houses of the poor. Those with a lot of land, be they Kikuyu or any other tribe, were left intact. The total damage inflicted to them was either 2 or 3 herds of cattle being slaughtered by the youth. I'm sure the poor person would have given all the sufurias and mattresses not to be killed or for their houses not to be burned. But they had no choice unlike the rich. In Nairobi, there was no fighting in Muthaiga or where I live. There was no fighting even in Buruburu or even in Umoja. It was in the poorest of the poor, the slums. Korogosho, Kibera, Mathare, Mukuru, all those places, that's where the fighting was. When we met at Parliament for swearing in, although we did not want to even look at each other, we were so careful, nobody as much as touched each other. Because we are selfish. We want our wars to be fought by the poor. So it's the poor who died, it's the poor who went to jail. This is the time to tell the people to open their eyes, because these are things they know. But poverty makes you desperate and clouds your eyes with curtains, and you fail to see the issues. Anybody telling you that it is too early now, Kenya is campaigning too early, we are posing the question, is it too early to talk about negative ethnicity? Is it too early to rally Kenyans to unite together and fight the issues that afflict them? Is it too early to talk about the need to fight corruption? Is it too early to build strong parties, to build a democratic culture, a culture of respect for human rights, a culture for transparency and accountability? Are those things you can instill in people one day merely because elections have been called? Those saying it's too early are people who do not want Kenyans to be socialized well enough to take their destiny in their hands. And that's why now Kenya has ignored all that. We march on. At every opportunity, we are with the people talking about these things. But the only thing they hear is Martha Karua giving her notice of intention, which I now hereby serve you, that be it today evening, tomorrow or 2012, I will offer myself as a candidate to be chief executive of our country. And the reason I'm giving my notice early, I believe people should never elect a chief executive they don't know. It is therefore important that those who desire give their notice early so that the people of Kenya can watch them at work, can watch their actions. You cannot know me because I've told you who I am. You need to walk with me in the things I do to see whether you understand me, so that next time I tell you I want to be chief executive, you will not have any difficulties of giving your verdict based on information, not on ignorance, not based on a one-day encounter like this one, based on things you have looked at, and you can be able to say yes or no based on that. So that's what NARC Kenya believes in. About our ideology, because we are still polishing our manifesto, and we are still entertaining, therefore, contributions from our members in terms of ideas. Contributions to a party are not just cash. It's also ideas, volunteering with the things we are doing, like the ladies and gentlemen before you have volunteered. So a party must take seriously the contributions from its members, both in terms of ideas, in terms of volunteering to do work, in terms of outreach, and in terms of capital. And NARC Kenya believes that its wealth is the number of people we reach, so that together we can make a difference. Alone, it's very difficult to get to every nook and cranny in the country, but mobilizing our over 5,000 party officials and supporters whom we enlist, like we are trying to enlist you, then it will be so much easier to transform our nation. And even if you don't agree with us about NARC Kenya, at least I'm sure you would agree with us on the need of doing something for our country. Let all those who see that there is unfinished business, there is something that needs to be fixed, join us to fix it. Our policies are informed by looking at issues through the lens of social justice. We do not believe, the way it's happening in Kenya today, that you can talk of creating jobs when the poor Kenyans who struggle to make ends meet by hawking either fresh foods or mitumba clothes, and the poor people who fix cars for others as mechanics, you on a daily basis harass, break their bones, and destroy their livelihoods, and then you pretend you're trying to create jobs. You are creating more joblessness. You are driving people to desperation where they might have to adopt criminal ways to make ends meet. So as we strive to create jobs, we must first give dignity to those things Kenyans have identified that they can do to work out a living. It is not wrong for a city like Nairobi to designate areas where hawking can go on. But you don't just wake up in the morning and say, no hawkers in the central business district. It must be done in an orderly manner, and it also must be consultative so that those being moved are aware. If you need land where the mechanics are, you don't just take them out. You also don't need to beat them to get them out of there, to beat them like animals. You need to move them in an orderly way and to give them alternative, viable, not the alternative you think, viable for their businesses. I see a lot of hawking even on this Oxford Street. Nothing wrong with hawking. If we think that the way they are hawking is unseemly, it's up to the city council then to build nice kiosks which they can rent to them. And then designate areas in the city center. Nobody is going to take a bus to Mudhurwa and then pay more money taking a bus home after shopping. So for the people in the city center, we need to do what is done elsewhere. Make sure that there are areas where those hawkers can be able to sell their merchandise quickly to people going home. We give dignity to those small businesses. I cannot expound everything, but I'll also tell you that on things like tourism, we spend money advertising. We pride ourselves at how many people come to Kenya. But who takes the money? Kenya takes peanuts, the rest is taken abroad. Foreign companies will be taking payments here in Europe, in America. The only thing we'll get is the bed occupancy and the foods. The lodges, because we have allowed a lot of private lodges, will be collecting money for those animals. Those animals are our common heritage. It should be the county councils collecting the money for the animals. It should be the investor, so-called, who has built the lodge, should be entitled only for the bed occupancy. Those animals are our common heritage as a nation. If you look at who is exploiting our minerals, the same. We are selling our birthright to others, contrary to even UN conventions. If you look at the UN Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, you will see that all agreements entered on behalf of a nation should be for the mutual benefit of the people of that nation and the person entering into agreement with the country. So when you give mining rights that do not leave Kenyans to benefit, of their natural resource, that agreement is actually illegal according to international law. Why the Arab world developed, they decided to own their natural resource, which is oil. If only we could own our labor. If we owned our tea and our coffee, we would be very far.